If I told you that the world's biggest tech companies are currently sitting on $3 trillion in off-the-books financial commitments.
Which is a number so large it's hard to even wrap your head around.
Right, like a number large enough that it could theoretically trigger the next massive global financial crisis. You'd probably think I was talking about, I don't know, toxic mortgages or something.
All of like 2008 all over again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm actually talking about the hidden cost of the artificial intelligence sitting on your phone right now.
Yeah, because the visible progress that we see every day, the chatbots and the image generators you play with, they're really just the symptoms of this massive structural reality that is happening entirely out of public view.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. Because if you've just been casually following the news, you might think the only thing that matters is how, quote-unquote, smart AI is getting. But we've got a stack of tech news sources from today, Friday, August 14th, 2026, specifically looking at the latest dispatches from the Daily Tech Reader. And our mission today is to look under the hood.
Yeah, to see what's actually driving all of this.
Exactly. We're going to uncover the massive shifts happening beneath the surface. So we're looking at how the AI race has suddenly mutated into this ruthless war of economics. And we'll dig into that hitting $3 trillion hardware bill we just mentioned.
Which is fascinating.
It really is. And then we'll look at how all this digital capital is finally spilling over into physical reality like robotics and space, and finally the intense security collisions that are happening as a real-world consequence of all this.
I mean, we are witnessing the exact moment where technology transitions from being, experimental magic in an isolated lab to actual deployable infrastructure in the real world.
Yeah.
And the growing pains of that transition are proving to be enormous.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with the economics race. Because for the last few years, the entire narrative was basically a brain power contest, right?
Right. Who has the smartest model, who can score the highest on the bar exam, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But reading through today's dispatches, it feels like the rules of the game just completely flipped. It's no longer a race for intelligence. It is a brutal, bare-knuckle race for operational speed and cost efficiency.
Oh, absolutely. And you see this most clearly in the hardware choices the big labs are making now.
Like OpenAI's new tier.
Exactly. OpenAI just launched their ultra-fast GPT 5.6 Sol tier. And the crazy thing is, they aren't even running this on standard NVIDIA GPUs anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've shifted to custom Cerebras hardware, and they are hitting 750 tokens per second.
Wow. Which is, wait, that's like 14 times faster than standard inference, right?
Right, because think about it. If you are trying to integrate AI into, say, a high-frequency trading system, or even just a voice assistant that needs to naturally interrupt a user, raw intelligence is totally useless if it arrives 3 seconds too late.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk to a robot that pauses for 3 seconds before every sentence.
Exactly. Latency is suddenly the only metric that matters in the enterprise space.
And the pricing structures are reflecting that exact shift, too. I mean, Google just dropped Gemini 3.7 Flash.
Which is wild, considering 3.6 Flash came out, just 3 weeks ago?
Literally 3 weeks ago. It's moving so fast. And they gave it a massive 1 million token context window. And they slashed the introductory price to 75 cents per million input tokens.
Half the price of the previous version.
All right. But I guess my question is, how are they actually making it that much cheaper to run without just, dumbing down the model itself?
Well, it comes down to something called orchestration.
Okay.
Take a look at Writer, the enterprise AI company. They just launched Palmyra X6. And they aren't even really trying to build a smarter core brain. They are targeting a 50% cost reduction purely by focusing on how the workflow itself is managed.
Oh, I see. So it's not the brain, it's the process.
Exactly. Instead of running every single user query through the massive, expensive core model, orchestration uses this intelligent router. So it checks a semantic cache to see if the exact same question was already answered recently, or it farms out basic logic steps to a tiny, super cheap model. It only wakes up the heavy-hitting, expensive model when deep reasoning is actually required.
So you don't need a smarter AI. You basically just need a more efficient middle manager routing the traffic.
That's exactly it.
The analogy I keep coming back to is the early airline industry.
Oh, how so?
Well, for a long time, the tech world was obsessed with building the Concorde, right? Like, who can build the fastest, highest-flying experimental jet, and nobody cared about the fuel burn.
Oh, that makes sense. Just pure performance at any cost.
Exactly. But looking at Google, cutting prices by half, and these companies relying on orchestration to bypass heavy computation, it's like we've suddenly shifted to who can run the most ruthlessly efficient budget airline. It's all about squeezing the operational margins.
Yeah, the new competitive frontier is cost per completed task. But what's really interesting is how this global market is fracturing geopolitically, which makes those margins really complicated.
Oh, right, the Apple news.
Yeah, look at Apple's latest move. They are teaming up with Alibaba to train a custom proprietary AI model specifically for mainland China.
Because ChatGPT is banned there, right?
Right. And generative AI requires strict regulatory clearance from the state anyway. So Apple is building this localized walled garden just for the Chinese market ahead of their Apple Intelligence rollout.
Just to maintain direct control over their infrastructure.
Exactly.
Which actually brings up a pricing dynamic that honestly blew my mind today.
The DeepSeek thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the U.S. companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and Google are slashing their prices to compete with Chinese disruptors like DeepSeek and Moonshot AI, right? Because those companies built their entire reputation on offering incredibly cheap enterprise models.
Right, they forced the prices down.
Booty, DeepSeek, just launched their flagship V4 Pro, and they raised their API prices by up to 1,100%.
It's a massive jump.
It's completely upside down. Wait, are we seeing a role reversal in global tech economics? Like, U.S. companies are racing to the bottom, and the Chinese disruptor is suddenly hiking prices by 1,000%.
I know, it looks completely contradictory, but it makes perfect sense when you look at the mechanics of enterprise lock-in.
How so?
Well, DeepSeek used those rock-bottom prices to capture massive market share early on. But once a Fortune 500 company builds their entire internal data pipeline around a specific API structure.
Oh, like tuning all their system prompts and software logic to that specific model's quirks.
Exactly. Once you do that, the switching cost becomes astronomical. It's so hard to untangle. Now that DeepSeek has that deep enterprise lock-in and they have a model that matches frontier performance, they're basically testing the elasticity of demand.
They know it's too expensive for these massive companies to just rip out the underlying plumbing.
Right, so they are hiking the rent to see what premium these businesses are actually willing to pay.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if token costs are generally dropping across the board and companies are fighting over these tiny margins, someone still has to pay for the underlying physical compute.
Oh, the hardware bill.
Right. You need vibrating, heat-generating infrastructure to run all this orchestration and routing. And the financial reality of that infrastructure is currently hiding in the fine print of big tech's accounting.
Yeah, we are looking at numbers that fundamentally warp our understanding of corporate risk.
Give me the breakdown.
So according to Goldman Sachs and the Financial Times today, if you aggregate Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, NVIDIA, Oracle, and Meta, they have accumulated nearly $1.5 trillion in contractual purchase commitments for chips, data center capacity, and energy.
1.5 trillion.
And that's just the purchase commitments. Plus, there is a separate $1.5 trillion in lease obligations, and these exposures sit largely off their conventional balance sheets.
Wait. Okay, so are we looking at a giant tech mortgage crisis? Because if $3 trillion is tied up in long-term, non-cancelable leases, what happens if the actual enterprise revenue from these AI models doesn't arrive in time to pay the rent?
That is the trillion-dollar question. What's fascinating here is how the mechanics of this risk have completely evolved.
What do you mean?
Well, historically, if a company builds a massive factory, they take on traditional debt, they build a physical asset, and it sits visibly on their balance sheet.
Right.
But the AI compute race is moving so frantically right now that these tech giants are securing capacity by signing multi-year, non-cancelable purchase agreements.
But they are guaranteeing revenue to utility companies and data center builders for years into the future.
Exactly, just to secure a place in line. So the systemic risk now lives in operational contracts, not traditional debt.
Oh, I see.
If the cost per task drops so low that the revenue doesn't cover those underlying hardware commitments, those off-balance sheet leases suddenly become a very, very heavy anchor.
And you can really see the ripple effects of this massive hardware demand flooding down the whole supply chain. I mean, look at Applied Materials.
The chip manufacturing equipment company.
Yeah, they just posted a $9.1 billion quarter, and they are planning to double their semiconductor system output by 2028.
Which makes sense given the demand.
But it's not just the fancy cutting-edge AI brains. China's SECMOR, their major domestic chip maker, just saw their quarterly profits more than triple to nearly $480 million.
Wow.
And they were doing that by running at 93.7% utilization, making mature node chips, not even the cutting-edge stuff.
Right, and this is a bottleneck people rarely discuss because everyone focuses on the advanced NVIDIA GPUs.
Yeah, the glossy stuff.
Exactly. But an AI data center is a massive industrial facility. It needs sophisticated power management systems. It requires specialized networking controllers to link thousands of chips together and countless voltage regulators to handle the massive electrical draw.
Right, and you don't need a cutting-edge 3-nanometer fabrication process to build a basic voltage regulator.
No, not at all. Those rely on older, mature node technologies. So the sheer volume of AI data centers being constructed globally is sucking up the supply of these foundational components, which is stressing the entire electronics industry.
So if you have $3 trillion in physical infrastructure being built, that rising tide of capital has to overflow into other physical engineering sectors, right? Like you can't just build that much hardware without lifting other hard tech boats.
It completely changes the investment math. I mean, for a decade, Silicon Valley was hyper-fixated on software because software is incredibly cheap to distribute.
You build an app once, you sell it 1,000,000 times.
Exactly. But now that investors have normalized pouring billions into physical data centers, the appetite for hard tech like robotics, space, advanced materials, that has officially returned.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Look at the venture capital data from July. 40 new unicorns were minted.
Startups valued at over $1 billion.
Right. And that is the strongest monthly surge in 4 years. And it was heavily weighted toward chips, energy, and robotics.
Which gives some really crucial context to the massive transportation news today.
The Uber deal.
Yeah. Pony.ai and Uber are expanding their partnership to deploy over 2,000 robotaxis across Europe and the Middle East.
2,000. So we are finally moving out of the era of small, geo-fenced pilot programs in a couple of tech hubs and into actual commercial fleet scale.
Exactly. But pay close attention to the mechanics of Uber's business model in this deal. They are acting entirely as the distribution layer.
Right. It's like Uber is trying to be the streaming service for robotaxis.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, they don't want to make the movies, meaning they don't want to own the physical cars, absorb the hardware depreciation, or even build the autonomous driving stack.
Yeah.
They just want to own the network platform you open on your phone to watch the movie.
Exactly. They let hardware companies like Pony.ai take on all the massive capital risk of the physical assets, while Uber extracts the network value.
Wow.
But this normalization of heavy capital expenditures goes far beyond our roads. Look at Astra. They're attempting a massive comeback in the aerospace sector right now.
Oh man, Astra has had a wild ride.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, they were a space startup that went public during the massive SPAC boom, hit a $2 billion valuation, crashed completely, and had to be taken private in 2024 for just over $11 million.
Such a massive drop.
And now they are out seeking $250 million at a $1 billion valuation, basically rebuilding around Rocket 4, which is this $5 million expendable launch vehicle.
And they're targeting a very specific geopolitical reality with that. The U.S. military and national security apparatus need responsive, dispersed orbital access.
Right.
They can't just rely on massive established launch pads that take months of preparation because those are obvious targets. They need the ability to launch cheap, expendable rockets quickly from almost anywhere.
But how do these deep tech startups even survive the years it takes to build this technology?
Yeah.
Like the capital burn rate for space or quantum computing must be absolutely insane.
It is.
I mean, look at Inflection, the quantum startup. They just doubled their revenue to $12.6 million, primarily through accelerated work with NASA. But we aren't anywhere close to full-scale commercial quantum computers yet. So how are they making money?
Well, that's the trick to surviving the hard tech burn rate. You pivot to bridge technology.
Bridge technologies.
Yeah. Inflection isn't trying to sell a full-scale, general-purpose quantum computer today. They are taking the intermediate breakthroughs they've made in their research, things like highly sensitive quantum sensors, advanced atomic clocks, and government-grade navigation systems that don't rely on GPS.
Oh, and selling those right now.
Exactly. They survive by solving high-end, niche hardware problems today to fund the bridge to the quantum future.
Okay, but when you smash ultra-fast AI, massive computing scale, and physical tech into the real world like this, they collide violently with regulation, privacy, and security. We really have to talk about the dark side of this acceleration.
We do. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, the digital infrastructure we are building is fundamentally dual use.
Right.
The same orchestration techniques that make an AI incredibly efficient at managing a complex corporate supply chain can be weaponized to automate a multi-stage cyber attack.
And the policy shifts reflecting this are honestly staggering. Today, there's a new memo from the Trump administration authorizing private sector offensive cyber attacks against criminal hackers.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And just to be clear to the listener, we are looking at this purely as a structural reality in national security policy. We aren't taking any political sides here.
Of course.
But it represents a sharp break from decades of U.S. doctrine. Historically, offensive cyber operations were strictly confined to government agencies.
Right.
Now, the National Security Memorandum is openly encouraging American companies to conduct their own retaliatory operations.
It is a profound shift in the monopoly on force. Because previously, if a foreign entity attacked a private U.S. company, it was the sole responsibility of the state to respond.
Yeah?
By authorizing private corporations to hack back, we are officially deputizing the private sector.
So what does this all mean in practice? If a private tech company's IT department launches an offensive hack against a criminal group, but say that criminal group routed their attack through an innocent third-party servers.
Which happened all the time.
Right. Or what if the group is secretly backed by a foreign state? Doesn't that risk a corporation accidentally sparking an international incident? Like, where does corporate IT end and national security begin?
That's the problem. The attribution problem in cybersecurity is notoriously difficult. Private companies are increasingly being forced into these quasi-governmental roles precisely because the tools for cyber warfare are becoming totally democratized by AI.
Look at what China's ZAI just unveiled today, GLM 5.3.
Oh, the new model.
Yeah. It scored an 84.5% on CyberGem, which is near-frontier performance for cybersecurity tasks. And crucially, it is an open weights model.
And that open weights mechanism is why this is so critical. An open weights model means the raw, pre-trained neural network parameters are available to download.
For anyone.
Anyone. You can take that architecture, pull it offline, strip away all the safety guardrails, and fine-tune it locally on your own machine. And the thing is, an AI that is smart enough to review your own code and fix security vulnerabilities is mathematically identical to an AI that can review an adversary's code to find vulnerabilities to exploit.
The offensive and defensive capabilities are the exact same mechanism.
Exactly.
And the stakes for this are permanent. We saw today the French tax agency experienced a massive breach, exposing the identity and financial records of 700,000 taxpayers.
Which is terrifying.
It is, because if a hacker steals your credit card, you cancel it. You change your password.
Yeah.
But you cannot change your tax history or your fundamental identity data.
No, you can't.
It represents a long-duration risk that simply doesn't expire. And it's getting so severe that Apple is now resorting to literal lock screen push notifications to warn iPhone users when state-sponsored spyware is targeting them.
And think about the mechanics of why Apple has to do that now. They used to just send an email or a web alert if they suspected a threat. But the rise of zero-click exploits changes the whole game. Spyware can now infect your phone simply by receiving a specific text message or network packet without you ever tapping a link or making a mistake.
It just happens in the background.
Right. Because the infection is instantaneous and invisible, Apple has to bypass all standard communication and flash a direct red alert push notification straight to the lock screen. A consumer tech company is essentially acting as a global defense shield, alerting citizens to international espionage.
And while we are worrying about foreign espionage, the unprecedented scale of domestic surveillance is just flying under the radar. Look at Flock Safety today.
The camera company.
Yeah, they're a private company, and they now operate a network of 120,000 AI-powered license plate reader cameras across U.S. communities.
And these aren't traditional speed cameras just taking flat photos of plates.
Not at all.
The AI is actively analyzing the make, the model, the color, and even the behavioral patterns of the vehicles. It is creating this searchable, nationwide automated database of physical movement that local law enforcement taps into constantly.
It fundamentally changes what it means to drive down a public road. And regulators are struggling to even comprehend the speed of this infrastructure.
They're falling behind.
Way behind. We see Epic versus Google returning to court today, with a judge ordering Google to ease the installation of outside apps on Android. In Europe, the EU data protection watchdog is throwing red flags over the Europol police agency, aggressively expanding its data surveillance powers.
Right.
And in Australia, Meta just deleted over 750,000 accounts to comply with their under 16 social media ban, despite the fact that teenagers are already openly sharing VPN workarounds to bypass the geographical blocks.
Yeah, because regulators are applying 20th century paradigms like simple age bans and app store monopolies to a 21st century infrastructure that just routes around those blockades automatically. It's a complete mismatch in speed and scale.
It really is. Well, to recap our journey today, we started by looking at how AI has mutated into a ruthless economics race for token efficiency.
And orchestration.
Yes. We uncovered the hidden $3 trillion hardware bill making that speed possible, largely sitting in off-balance sheet leases. We tracked how that massive flood of capital is overflowing into physical reality, resurrecting space startups and fueling commercial robotaxi fleets.
Spilling into the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we ended with that real-world collision, a new era of democratized cyber warfare, permanent identity breaches, and massive public surveillance.
Which really leaves us with a critical question regarding the intersection of all that incredible efficiency and that expanding surveillance.
What's that?
Well, we've seen today that AI orchestration is driving the cost of complex, multi-step tasks down by 50%, while these nationwide AI camera networks are reaching unprecedented automated scale. So, if the computational cost of automatically tracking, categorizing, and predicting human behavior drops to near zero, what happens to anonymity?
Oh, wow.
In a decade, will digital privacy simply become a luxury good that only those with off-balance sheet wealth can afford to buy?
That is a chilling thought to leave on. The shiny glass of the tech skyscraper looks amazing from the street, but that foundation being dug underneath us, it's literally changing the ground we walk on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you next time.